I would like to share a very personal story as we close out 2023. A lot's changed in my life, and a lot's changed in the life of building culture as well. And to start off with the personal story, a little over 2 years ago, in August of 2021, I was hit by a bus. You don't hear that very often. And I guess technically, I didn't get hit by a bus. I almost got hit by a bus. We were approaching an intersection perpendicular to each other, and this is the bus. And as I see it, I'm driving this way. As I see it, I slam on my brakes. So rather than the bus T-boning me, like here, I actually slammed on my brakes. The bus kind of passed me just enough for me to slam into the bus. And I got out of the car, airbag didn't even deploy, and got limped out of the car and thought, whew, I really narrowly missed one there, except for the fact that I just bought this truck 2 weeks before from a really cool and generous homeowner that we were working on their house. But it turns out I was not so fortunate. I'm glad I didn't get T-boned because I might either be dead or even more debilitated than I am. But over the past 2 years, I learned that I had a pretty bad foot injury from my taking all the impact. And over the past 2.5 years, I've had 4 foot surgeries, on and off crutches, all very painful surgeries to be clear. And my mindset the whole time has been, after this next surgery, then I'll get back to normal. Then I'll get back to, going on walks and playing volleyball on weekends and running around with my daughter. And that just hasn't happened as of December 28th, 2023. And actually about a month ago, I ended up pulling out a cane. I don't have it next to me right now because I can kind of limp around if I'm careful. But when I'm out and about and actually walking, I have to use a cane because I can't push off my foot. And it's really interesting the change from being crippled in a sense, barely kind of getting around. I don't go on walks. I can go from my car into a meeting or something like that. So a lot of people don't even really know what I'm at because I've just limited my lifestyle so much that when people see me out and about, I'm just going from my car into a meeting, and I can kind of fake it walking on the side of my foot or something. But frankly, it's all getting so painful and stuff that it's messing with other parts of my body that I'm just having to move to a cane, and that's the best way for me to get around, and of course just still limiting what I'm doing. It's a pretty big life change to go from being a very physical person, being very active. I played football, I played hockey, I even in my adult life, I was playing spike ball and volleyball every weekend. I interact with the world in a very physical way. I love going on adventures. I just love walking around cities. I love hiking. And I can't do any of those things anymore. And I'm not completely hopeless. I think I might get to the point where maybe I can do some of those things again. I'm pretty convinced at this point I'm never going to be a runner or run marathons, and I don't even know if I'll ever be able to play sports again. At this point, I would be just very happy to be able to walk 10,000 steps in a day with medium to pain, because right now I'm not even anywhere close to that. And some interesting things about that, there's nothing easy about that. Losing the ability to do something just so foundationally, you don't even realize you're standing on your foot when your foundation is off. Like your whole body's thrown off. And as a very physical person, as a male, it's been hard to actually whip out my cane because in some ways it was easier to pretend because then people don't know I'm weak. And I don't mean I'm trying to hide or disguise or be some tough guy. I just mean just probably from a biological perspective, going around with a cane, showing people, I'm this, steal from me. It's this weird thought oh my gosh, someone could do something to my children or my wife and I could do nothing. I would just be here on my cane hobbling along behind. There's a lot of humility. Well, the potential for humility, I should say. I think the first potential is anger and resentment and wondering why and how unfair it all is and all that. To be clear, there's people that have been through far worse things than me and have gone on to live amazing lives. Where the part that I'm going through now, I think, is you could call it the acceptance stage. And if this is the rest of my life, okay, well, I still have to, and I still want to be a great father and a great husband and a person, a trustworthy person in my community. And I want to lead a good business. And having a broke foot isn't an excuse to not do those things. And in fact, why would I not do those things still? I mean, I could just wallow in the I don't know, the victimhood of it, or I can decide to make something of it. There's really only one option in my mind, because otherwise you're just miserable on top of being crippled. So some of the, you could say, blessings that have come out of this over the past year are actually quite profound. You know, I talked about how I've been a very physical person my whole life. And, you know, I started off at KPMG in my career, for those of you who know my whole story. And I went off and did the Peace Corps. By the way, I could have never done the Peace Corps being the condition I'm in. Went off and did an apprenticeship. Couldn't have done that. Been a builder, all that. Well, I've had multiple identities in my life, ultimately trying to find what I'm meant to do and what I want to do. And I've totally finally found it, you could say, like in building culture and what we're doing. But building culture has been an evolution over the past 8 years. I haven't been doing the same things. And now it's gone from just me to actually being a whole team of people doing stuff. And it's really amazing. But I notice where I'm at now is I've been very stuck on this idea of being a mason and being a builder, and really like trying to keep that identity with me, even though I can see what I need to become to lead building culture into what it could be, into its full potential. And I don't think I was completely willing to let those things go until being forced to let them go. And it's been interesting because it coincided with a trip to, of all places, Opelika, Alabama this summer, where I met a developer and mentor and Christian guy named John Marsh and his family, and the work that they're doing. And the funny thing is, I'm not even talking about business stuff. I went there to talk about business, and he was like, oh, we're not talking about business. We're talking about you, what's in here. Because I don't know how he knew, but he told me something with my identity was off. He's like, you don't know who you are. And I said, yes, I do. I spent a whole weekend arguing with him. It was a very uncomfortable weekend, actually. It's kind of one of those things where your mentor beats the crap out of you, but you needed it. And I mean that metaphorically. I think he knew exactly what I needed. But part of it, he was like, dude, you're not a builder. You're an artist. And coming from a background of, you know, my dad was an accountant. I didn't think I had an artistic bone in my body growing up. I didn't know how to draw. I went and did accounting. You know, when I went off to learn to build, I never thought I would teach myself to design houses. I thought I would just be kind of like a contractor and have to go find designers. And turns out I actually love design and quite good at it. And it's something that's evolved over time. And another element to that is something you might have been noticing lately is all the content and things coming out, including not only a podcast and more video stuff, but also a newsletter, the Building Culture Playbook. And so much of that has come from me exploring this new identity, because I can't interact with the world in the same way that I used to. You know, I used to interact with the world physically. Now I have to interact with the world with my voice. And I've never really trusted that voice. Not really. I've always played with it, you know, and I've, you know, maybe wanted to, but I just never really trusted it. And now that I've had this really big part of me taken away, it's like, all right, let's lean into this and make the best of it and see what I could, see what happens. And I don't mean it's easy. That has made being crippled or easy. You know, because it's not something I don't think you just get over, right? It's not like one day I woke up and I'm like, oh, I'm just over it because I've accepted it. Because it's something that you feel every single step is painful, even with a cane, you know, so it's not something you can forget. But it is something you can accept daily. And that's, if I start thinking about the future and all the things that I'll miss and couldn't do because of this life I had imagined, that's where I get in trouble. What works for me is accepting today. And boy, when I do that and I think about all the amazing things in my life, my wife and my daughter and my family and the baby on the way and our house and the building culture team and so many great people and colleagues around me and people that have supported me and mentors and gosh, buyers, clients, trades. I have so many tremendous amounts of gifts and blessings in my life, that I would trade my foot for all of this if I had to. I mean, ideally, I wouldn't have to do. I could have it all, but if I can't have it all, I'd rather be crippled and have all the blessings in my life than be fully physically healthy and not have the relationships that I do in my life. So that's been a really big story. And I want to open this up out loud and kind of tell everyone, because it's something that no one's really known about. There hasn't really been a reason to talk about it. I keep thinking I'm going to get better. And by the way, I'm not even getting into the lawsuit, because it was a city bus, and the state caps their own liability at $175,000. And that law was made in the 1970s, which in today's dollars is like $500,000. And then once you take out the 40% legal fee and then all the surgeries, I might walk away with a couple, maybe 10, 20 grand, maybe. And we're having to sue because they wouldn't give us the money, even though we've got incontrovertible video proof. And they offered money, but not even the full amount. And even if I get the full amount, it won't be even close to enough to cover, let alone I need more surgeries, at least 2, maybe many more, along with probably a lifetime of physical therapy. So I'm coming out way in the negative on the money. And I'm also on my 3rd lawyer, because I've had to fire 2 injury lawyers because they didn't do anything. I think it's because it's a state case and the money's capped. And so they decide they don't care and they don't tell you, and you can't do anything about it. Just the way it is with this thing. So it's been a lot of acceptance of the things that I cannot control over the past 2 years. And boy, there's a lot more things I can't control than I would like. And that's why I talk about it being an incredibly humbling experience. When you get hit by a city bus, and I feel entitled to every bit of dollars and and nothing works out. The city doesn't do anything. The lawyers don't do anything. The news doesn't do anything. You just can't do it. You're just helpless. Being mad doesn't do anything. You start learning, or I start learning, what are the things I can control, and that's my response and my reactions, and those are the things I'm focusing on now. And the more I accept that, the happier I get. And along with my, you could say, evolving identity, and I think that's the case for everyone. Everyone's always changing and growing, or at least that's the hope and the ideal. And that's also the case with companies. Like, I think sometimes we forget, companies just feel like these things out there in the world that just kind of exist and do things. And we forget that it's people that do it. And I mean, I forget that, right? Even when I'm interacting with other businesses, sometimes it just seems like a business, as if its own thing, but it's people, and it's the intention of them that is the business, even if it's the product they're making. And so I want to give a little bit of an update on the evolution of building culture's identity too, which in some ways coincides with this, and in some ways completely separate, and in some ways it's also shaped by the other people that are involved with building culture now. But to give you a quick background, COVID was pretty brutal on the business. We had just moved to Oklahoma City, and when I say we, it was just me when I just moved to Oklahoma City in 2020, and then COVID hit, and we had a baby in April 2020. And you're trying to start a business over, and I know there was houses selling for twice the price during the middle of COVID, but when you're starting a business over and all the trades are so busy, you can't do anything. We called to get our brick on our house. We had the foundation ready to go, and brick had gone from a 2-week lead time, which it usually was, to a 12-month lead time. And we had to scramble and try to figure stuff out. And we were buying shipping containers worth of insulation and all sorts of stuff that as a small business is very, 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 very hard. And all our budgets went up by $150,000, $200,000 in the middle of our builds, and really, really rough. And a rough financial time. And we ended up having to pivot to doing some stick framing, because we literally could not build brick houses. 1, for sourcing the brick, and 2, we could not get the funding to build them, and we didn't have them to buy them because we were buying them on spec. We were doing the best we could with customs, but in order to survive, we had to pivot to stick frame. And that ended up being actually really valuable for me. And I'm going to say me here because at this time, it really was me making these decisions. And I want to be clear there, because there is a we now. But at the time, it was kind of me going through this personal transformation part as building culture grows and evolves, and had to do a stick frame house. And that was actually really hard on me. I was like, oh my gosh, I've been talking about, I do solid masonry and build 1,000 years and yada, yada. And building stick frame house. It just felt, it started off feeling like a cop out, but the longer I chewed on it, it was like, do I want to be in business? Or do I want to go out of business and be very moralist, masonry, be a purist about it? And I decided I wanted to make a difference. And to make a difference, I have to survive long enough to be able to do so. And when it comes down to it, it costs us 40% more to build a house today than it did 3 years ago, post-COVID. And that's not changing. I'm not talking about, lumber prices are way up and they're coming down. No, that is the new normal because of inflation in both materials and labor. And while some of that could come down a little bit, I think overall that's going to go up over time because labor, it's a shortage. And I was already talking about how our houses are 20 to 30% more than a similar high-end house because we've started off in high-end just because whenever you're playing with, I'm almost doing like research and development in real time, building these amazing things, you kind of have to start off in high-end stuff. You can't just go building low-end stuff when you're, or more cost-effective things when you're figuring out the economics and the technology and the processes and practices and all that. Because you can make up for a lot of that with just a lot of attention to detail, but attention to detail costs a lot of money. Gosh, I forgot where I was going with that. But it costs us 40% more, and that's not changing. And so we've actually decided to incorporate stick framing into our normal offering. And it's not that we're not pursuing masonry. It doesn't change anything about the mission. We've always wanted to be a develop, design, build. We've been design, build for a while, and now we're moving into development where when I say development, we'll be buying land, creating the urban plan for it, doing the architecture, building it, doing the interior design, curating the businesses and things like that. And on top of that, one day, I hope we can have kind of a fund of mission-minded capital that's a really long-term 20 to 30-year thinking where we can go out and build great things debt-free for all different groups of people income-wise. And because really you just need to increase the time clock for that stuff like that to be able to work. I'm rambling a little bit. I think it's a little hard for me, honestly, to just talk about where we're at and be open and honest about it because I'm afraid people won't understand, I think. But honestly, the more we sit on it and the more we engage with it, the better we feel about it because we realize how much innovation can be done within stick framing. And there's already some amazing people out there and building scientists and other builders and architects that have made a lot of progress on the building science front with stick frame. And so we're hopping on board that and saying, okay, let's take the exact same approach that we take with our brick masonry stuff. How do you make it beautiful, healthy, and as durable as absolutely possible? And still, let's build quality over quantity. Let's build, nicer things, more craftsmanship in a smaller box. The exact same framing. And in some ways, I actually think we can affect and influence the industry more by being in stick framing because it's a lot easier for people to copy us. And with the masonry stuff, because of COVID as well, not only the price increases, which we need scale to bring prices down. We need scale to bring prices down, and we need culture to be willing to pay more for housing, you could say. A lot of people want to put everything on the builder and the developer and blah, 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 blah. And that's true. That's at least 50% of the equation. The other 50% of the equation is buyers actually be willing to pay more for something. Because it's kind of funny that you think about, a Kia. You can pay $25,000 for a Kia or $100,000 for a Mercedes, almost the same car, right? Assume they're the same sedan, basically. And guess what? With those cars, they'll actually probably go about the same distance, but the Mercedes is just finer craftsmanship, and people will pay more for that all day. And when you go to get a loan on it, you don't get an appraiser that goes, oh, no. You can actually get a Kia for $25,000, so we're not going to loan you $100,000 for the Mercedes. We're only going to loan you $25,000 and make you come up with the $75,000 in cash. That's exactly what happens in housing. We build something good, and it might be even the same price point as something else next to us, but because our house is smaller, so the price per foot is up, the appraiser comes in and says, nope, your house isn't worth that. Then the bank won't lend the money, and then the buyer is sitting here looking at a bank, and the appraiser is saying the house that you're trying to buy is not worth this money, and the buyer, being a smart person, is saying, well, even if I can afford to pay cash for it, if the bank and appraiser are saying this, how am I going to ever sell it and even break even or make money? And so it makes it very, 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 very hard to sell houses. So there's a lot of barriers in the way that we need to work on from appraisers and banking and just the mindset of people that price per foot is not the ultimate value of a house. It is a very important metric. It's a helpful metric, but it's not the end all be all. We can build cheap spaces as cheap as anyone else. And that's the problem is we incentivize the building a big cheap space. So there's a lot to be done on the cultural front. And I say that because a lot of times people ask me, hey, I'm not in the industry, but can I help? Well, yeah, absolutely. Because it's a mindset. It's a culture. It's something ingrained. It's values. And so you can have those values. You can talk about those values, and all of that pushes the ball forward. Not just for me. There's so many people, and I say me, building culture, us. Like, there are so many people out there doing amazing work, architects and municipal, civic servants and developers and builders. There's a lot not doing great work, but there's a lot doing good work. And and all those people are frustrated by the same things we are. We need your help. We need people out there to be talking about this stuff and talking about what they want, that they want to be able, their kids to be able to walk to school, that they don't want to live in some isolated cookie cutter suburban subdivision. And it's okay if you want those things. I'm just saying, I talk to a lot of people that want different things, and all these structures and professions and municipalities or rules and regulations, all that tend to get in the way of that as a broad critique. So it's not that our mission at Building Culture is being watered down. In fact, I would say it's just gotten bigger. That's the thing. It's expanded so much. Like, our North Star, the best way we've come up with saying it is cultivating a better human habitat, cultivating, a beautiful, resilient, life-giving, thriving habitat that we will love, that our kids will thank us for, that will free up future, I call it compound architecture, just like compound interest, this thing that builds over time. If we can build a compound architecture, imagine what could be possible in 50 years or 100 years for future generations. They've got the balance sheet of society, of the culture of their city is high, and that then they have resources to go and try and explore and do new things. And gosh, it gets me really excited. And there's a lot that has to happen. So there's advocacy, there's trades. We've got to build up our trades. We need policy changes. We need regulation changes. We need profession changes. We need changes in the mindset. We need changes in how we fund and fund things, both on the capital side and the banker side. And I'm not intimidated by these things. I'm excited by them. And we're not the only ones working on it. And that's why I'm excited, because there's other people here in the trenches working, risking, being courageous, to try to make a genuinely better world. And for us at Building Culture, that 100% includes masonry. I just cannot emphasize enough. I am such a nerd about masonry, and everyone in Building Culture is such a nerd about masonry. I was just in Spain learning all these amazing techniques that we want to bring back, and we're planning on doing on or at least bringing some of these elements on our next development, like some Guastavino staircases. But really what it's come down to is we need more time to develop kind of this masonry product for the mainstream. So now we'll just be building it on specialty projects, our true, like, all masonry stuff. We'll be building on higher end customs, on some higher end commercial buildings where it makes sense, and for clients, right? But we can't be building spec houses because we can't get the loans, we can't get the appraisals, and then we can't get the buyers. We'll be out of business if we keep trying. So we're going to be pivoting to really high end stick framing, and then the masonry, where we're going to be still pushing that forward, and the innovation, the engineering around it, the understanding around it with municipalities. And then we need to vertically integrate, because we can't even get what we call modular brick in Oklahoma anymore. They've stopped making any modular brick. So we have to go to Colorado for a brick. That's crazy. Not only is it not sustainable, but it doesn't make sense logistically. It doesn't make sense cost-wise. We have to get ties out of the UK. We get this rebar out of Canada. We get our mortar out of Ohio, because we don't stock locally in Oklahoma the materials, traditional materials we need. So that's part of our goal, is to do that. And we can do that by being successful, by building developments, giving people vision, creating beautiful places, not just beautiful buildings, beautiful places, places worth caring about, places worth loving. And by doing that, then we can maybe we can get a warehouse and can start stocking our mortar. And once we start stocking our mortar, even if it's that for veneer settings, we can start selling those materials. For example, lime mortar, because no one uses lime mortar here, and you don't want to tuck print. Well, I don't want to get into technical details, but that's really our thinking. And I just want to thank you all too for your encouragement, for following along. You'd be surprised how much just a comment or a note, even if we don't respond or I don't respond, can mean, because what we're doing and is really hard. And I've been at this for almost 10 years now, or 8 years officially, with building culture. And man, it's hard. It is hard work. It's a lot of risk. It has not paid well, you could say. And that's not why I got into it to begin with. It was never been about the money. I talk about this line borrowed from a mentor, but we work at the intersection of purpose and profits. Profits keep us grounded. They're a feedback loop, but it's not what gets us up in the morning. Purpose does. Building something meaningful does. But we have to have money if we want to keep doing that. And boy, I'm so excited about the kind of the foundation that we built with building culture. And I know some of you might think it's a step back, and that's okay. You're welcome to think whatever you want, but I just say, keep watching us. You'll see. We're going to pull off some amazing stuff. I can promise you that. Thanks for listening. I hope that something I've said may be of encouragement to you if you're going through a hard time, because boy, limitations in your own lives and heart, they can be really hard. And the things that have gotten me through are my relationships, my faith, and meaning and purpose. And this is probably the biggest thing I've really learned this year. And I'm still learning. I don't know if it's something that you completely learn, or you're always learning deeper, I guess you could say. Life isn't about happiness. Boy, these past few years have not been happy for me. They've been the hardest years of my life. Until this year. This year's had a lot of positives, 2023. It's about meaning, and it's about purpose, and because what happens when tragedy strikes? Because it will, whether it's a car wreck or some other debilitating disease, or something happens to a spouse or to a child, to a parent, or you lose your job, or who knows what it is. Happiness isn't going to get you through that. Meaning will, and even money, I don't think will get you through that. Not up here, not in the heart. Maybe physically you could take care of yourself, and in a lot of ways, I'm really glad I haven't made it with money. I mean, I know I don't mean I'm scraping by. You can see it. This is my garage, and I've got a very nice office I remodeled. But we still live on a budget. We don't go on vacation every year. We're have to be very intentional with where we put money. And I'm actually really thankful for that, because I think I could have covered a lot of soul work and heart work I needed to do with money. But I've been forced to engage and endure a lot more, because I can't even afford all the physical therapy I want. I would love to be able to just pay someone to come to my house and massage my foot 4 times a week. I can't. So it takes me a whole lot of maintenance time to do it, and a whole lot of money to do as well. It feels like a lot of money to us. Gosh, so that's, if this had happened to me 10 years ago when I was at KPMG, this would have killed me. So I'm so thankful for all the things that I have in my life, and I think I will, I don't know. I just can say, it's funny I'm saying this because it sounds so cliche, but like what I'm experiencing, I'm not telling you this, I'm experiencing this, that life, gosh, it's a journey. And I've spent too long attaching my happiness to end goals, to being at the top of the mountain or whatever it is. And that hasn't worked out very well. I've spent a lot of years not being super happy doing that. And it's interesting that a severe limitation like a car wreck and 2 years of pain and suffering, and then at the end of it isn't a payout, but just being crippled and no money and still a lawsuit ahead, has actually led to more happiness than any other time in my life. I think 2023 is probably, at least since I was a kid that I remember, it might be the most content year of my life. And man, for that, I'm thankful. And I'm thankful for all the people that have supported me, that has supported my family, that has supported our business building culture, whether that's you, our clients, our bankers, our trades, our subs, our team members, our employees. I mean, there's so many people that go into building a house, that go into building, to doing what we do. I hope you guys all have a great end of the year and Happy New Year's. And I wish you all well in 2024 to a life at the end of, at the end of 2024, perhaps we can all look back and point to things where we have more meaning and more purpose in our lives. Because that's really where my goal is now, is to keep pursuing that. And I think everything else will work itself out. Thanks and Happy New Year.